What is up, guys? Gideon here. And today we are finishing up the 3-part series. And oh boy, do we have an ending. Because today we are coming to the kind of current age, really, when I look back and I think about, my childhood gaming, my perspectives on games, those initial years. When I think about the influences I had on myself and through commercial media, through friendships, through the kind of the game releases that were out and how they influenced me, and also the interplay of that on consoles, how a game coming out might influence me buying a console. I mean, that's kind of crazy when I think about that, but that also is a thing, seemingly. I mean, that had happened twice so far in my story. So we are now on the 3rd part, the final part, and this is going to bring us from the back end of the last session, which is kind of talking about those kind of early vanilla WoW years, introduction into MMO kind of lifestyle, and really bringing us up to kind of where I sit currently and what type of a gamer I am. What does that word even mean? Like what is a gamer, and why do I call myself that? So let's have a wander back through time. And do you know what? Wherever you are as you hear this, whatever country you're in, I'm in obviously England, and I live in a pretty rainy part of England. The weather is not ideal 3/4 of the time. The 2 days of summer we get are, well, actually, do you know what? I joke about that, but actually it's been pretty good this year. This has actually been very pleasant. But we each have not just our own journey, we also have our own culture. I talk a little bit about how religion affected, my progression and development relating to gaming. It affected a hell of a lot more than that in different ways in the evolution of me as a human. But I'm very aware that we all come at this is just my story. And this isn't a judgment on anyone else's story. This is just me. This is what happened to me. And this, if anything, also it's a way for me to look at and, as Gideon the therapist, and saying, I lived through that. But what was that like? Like even though that was me, what must that have been like as a kid, to have all those influences, to have that, like, how did gaming help me deal with those problems and with those issues, and why does gaming, why do I hear so many stories like this where people aren't gamers or aren't involved in that kind of aspect of life, and then suddenly something happens or whatever and they find themselves there? Why do I hear so many relationships where I'll talk to couples and people will talk about how, generally speaking, it's the guy, but culture is shifting, how that guy he'll have his alone time, and that alone time will be based around gaming, or that there'll be some kind of issue because the guy watches porn, and porn may not be gaming, but it's certainly within the sphere. I mean, I don't think I've ever talked to a gamer that would classify themselves that way and that they wouldn't say that there's kind of some level of interaction, because you're kind of saturated with that these days. Like it's so connected to the online neighborhood, as it were, and that's going to be different in different cultures, different places around the world. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think that we all kind of understand this. I think we all on some level feel these pressures and these influences from the games we play and the culture around those games and the way they're advertised and all of this stuff. So let's pick up where we left off. So we are talking about a mid-20s Gideon here, and he is playing WoW in vanilla, and he is loving it. He is loving it. Now, why do I put it in such a dramatic way? Well, because it became a journey that lasted, until now. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate it on a different level now, but back then, no one knew what vanilla WoW was back then, but it was just everything. Paying the subscription every month didn't bother me at all, even though I didn't have a lot of money. Every time I got used to one character, I would start another one. It was seemingly endless. Even now, and I think a lot of WoW players can relate to this, I've gone back and played, not hardcore WoW, but like I've gone back and played, vanilla classic WoW when they released that with Blizzard, and it's great. It's painful if you've leveled post classic, and then you go back and you play, the bugged version which they released in all its glory. It's just, oh my god, it's so painful. Like the pacing and the speed and the items that don't actually have any relevance to your class, and it's just, time just works so differently, but it also has a brilliance to it, a kind of clarity of purpose, and it makes you work for it, like really work and bleed and smash the keyboard, as I probably did back in the day. And maybe that's an interesting thing to talk about at this juncture. Maybe some of those, kind of like negative aspects, because, one story when I think of WoW comes to mind, and it's a story where I remember I was in a relationship, and this was kind of the end of my 20s, about 28, 29. And I'd come out of a relationship. I was living with a girl, and I'd come out of a relationship, and she'd kind of left the flat that we were living in, and I was living there on my own. And very quickly I got into another relationship, and I remember this girl kind of vividly, in the sense that she was, as can sometimes happen in relationships, a breath of fresh air for kind of what you're used to. And she was lovely. She was absolutely just a really kind of beautiful soul. And I remember that, like, me transitioning from one relationship to another had caused some really kind of like internal issues, and some, I was very aware I had this beautiful new girlfriend, and we were doing everything you do it, in the new part of that kind of thing. But I think I was also kind of in pain in a lot of ways, and I think I wasn't really acknowledging that, because I was looking at my life. I'd kept the flat. My life was pretty easy. She was still my friend. She was absolutely lovely, my ex. I was pretty kind of stable. So, I had my job. I had this very attractive girl that seemed really in love with me, and everything should have been great. And I think I thought it was, with my eyes, as it were. But I think that getting over, and I'd been with my ex at this point like for about 3 years maybe, and I was very close with her family. I think it really took a lot out of me, and I think in a lot of ways, there was a bit of grass is greener mentality there, trying to kind of like be something I wasn't, or trying to grow into something maybe that I didn't know I could be, and not really feeling very comfortable in my own shoes with who I am, with the decisions I'd made. And I think I mourned that old relationship in a way that I didn't realise. And the reason I think that this was going on was because I remember a very vivid memory, and I won't go into this too deep because this is, you guys don't want to know this, but I remember this because everything kind of about a year in of going out with this girl, I remember WoW became very dominant for me. I remember I was in this guild, I had loads of friends in this guild, I was just on it all the time, and then I was staying up late and I was on my headphones while this was happening, and that was kind of it would just progress to such a dominating part of my life, and I was loving it. It was genuinely amazing, like those early days. I mean, vanilla was great when I remember it, but guild vanilla was just wow. And I think, actually, if I'm honest, I think we were just going into Burning Crusade, so it was the first expansion, and I kind of picked up with this guild, and everything just took off. Like, I was there, and when I wasn't there, when I wasn't on my headphones talking to these people, I just felt like not really comfortable in life. Like, I don't know. Like, I just felt happiest when I was online. And I felt like everything was so much harder not online, you know? And I think that, like, this had probably been because of this grief that I was going through that I didn't know, mourning kind of what I used to have with my ex, and then kind of trying to, like, feeling shame or guilt because I had this beautiful girl next to me. And anyway, one of the things that really got me here, and it's something I think about just, I suppose, on a humour level, but also on a kind of, you know, just a real way to explain how gaming can also be a negative, is I remember one day my partner at the time, she was kind of pottering around the house. She'd stayed over the night before, and I was gaming. I'd made sure she was okay with that, and it was like a Sunday or something. And she was like doing her own thing, and my headphones were on, and when my headphones were on at this point in my life, I was just engrossed in it. I was in one room, she was in a different room, and that was the norm. That was absolutely normal. I was just in a different world. I really wasn't even aware of her in a lot of ways, and that seemingly was okay. I mean, I was like, you know, kind of getting on to like later 20s, and I think she was kind of like early 20s, so she's like 22, and she was okay. She was on her phone, she was fine, at least with what she was saying. Anyway, iconically, and this is a very unique situation, but this is what happened. I remember playing, and I remember kind of getting, like, you know, up to lunchtime, sun is shining through the window, I'm in the living room playing with my headset on, talking to my guildies, enjoying the experience, and I remember her coming in and giving me a cup of tea, and I, you know, thank her for the cup of tea. She goes away, and then I kind of I'm you know, over the next half an hour, I'm kind of like aware that, like, I don't know, out the periphery of my vision, that something is kind of like there, like, because I'm in this room on my own, basically, you know, middle of the day, and I just kind of get this sense, as I'm absolutely engrossed in the screen, that something is just off to the left of me. So I kind of turn, and my, you know, very attractive girlfriend, I mean, I keep saying this, but she was, is standing now in the doorway with, all I can say is, the most provocative, what we have in England is called Ann Summer, so it's like lingerie basically, and she's standing in lingerie, and she's standing there just waiting for me to notice her. And you might think at this point, Gideon, it's very personal. Why are you telling me this? Why are you putting this here? Well, the reason I'm telling you this is because I think this is one of the most standout points when I think I started to realise how far you can lose yourself in gaming and in the stories that we can create online. Because I remember looking at her and seeing this probably very expensive outfit she'd bought, and she smiled at me, and it should have been the most arousing and wonderful moment where I should have just been like, wow, okay, I'm instantly coming off, my game and blah blah blah. Let's focus on what's important. And all I actually felt was a level of anxiety and pressure to perform, as it were. And I remember this is obviously a while ago for me, but I remember this feeling of how bizarre my organic reaction was. That I could see how pretty she was, how sexy she looked, how great the situation was, but to me it was almost like it was an inconvenience because I was gaming, I was in this world, I was talking to my friends, this was not what I'd planned. Control maybe was a part of that. I was not, it was out of my control. Now you might look at that and say, Gideon, it's the best form of not being in control you could have, maybe, someone that loves you, someone that wants to show that physically. But this is organic, remember guys, I'm not choosing to feel this way, this is happening in these split seconds as I notice, as I turn my head, and I feel this pressure, this enormous pressure and this anxiety of seeing this beautiful woman, and then knowing that I have to then perform, and I have to kind of, because I guess in that moment I don't want to. And the reason I tell you this is because that's what this channel is about. This isn't just about stories. It's not just about me telling you stuff or having an opinion. It's about me analysing not just gaming but myself. Can we not all do that? Can we not all look at like actions or things we think or things we say and just go, look, I can't say that out loud because maybe I lose a piece of myself, or maybe I lose your respect, or maybe I lose my job, or whatever it is, like when you're in those situations. But we still know that maybe we could have acted differently. In our heart of hearts, in that little voice in the back of our head, we still know these things, right? We how many times have you talked to someone and they've said or done something and you think, like, how are you justifying that? Like in your own head, like how are you doing that? Like, doesn't that hurt you? Doesn't that hurt you when you hurt others? And I'm not talking about the moral high ground here. I'm just saying, like, that moral compass that we all have on our own, from all the backgrounds we've been brought up in, from all the different types of parenting and all of that, from all those different influences like myself with religion. And in that moment, I suppose commercially speaking, she did everything she could to pull me away from that game. And maybe that was the message, is that I want some attention. Now, I remember coming off the computer and I remember, kind of giving her that attention. But I also remember it was this enormous sense of like forcing myself away. And I think in a way, I think she got that. I think that kind of maybe ruined some of the mood there. And that's why I guess when I think back about this, I think, God, like, how powerful did I need that game back then? Like, even in the face of things that I could look at and say, wow, why is it I say she was so pretty so many times? Why is it I say, that this is the story of all stories that I remember? Now, maybe those reasons are because maybe I didn't feel worthy of her. Maybe I felt that I was kind of stuck. And maybe the reasons I finished my last relationship, maybe they didn't kind of track as well as I thought. And maybe I just felt shame and I felt guilt for that. But that's not what this is about. What this is about to me is, why did WoW become what it became at that point? Why did it become everything? Was it just because it was a great game? Maybe. I don't think so, though. I think it became something to fill the hole that I had kind of created within myself. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of had a hole before that with religion, but that's a different story. I think that highlighted it very, very well for me. And I hope, even though obviously it's different in my head because I experienced it, but I hope you guys kind of understand why that story kind of highlights that. Because yes, of course it happened, but I was so unconsciously in need, like a drug, to be in the world of WoW, to be not in the working world where I earned basic wage, in the world where I felt alone, where I, didn't feel like I a bit of imposter syndrome maybe. I didn't feel any of that in WoW. I was amazing, I was happy, I was exciting, I was funny, people liked me. I didn't have to try. And then I turn to the side and suddenly I have to try again. I have to be a real person, and I have to be worthy of the love that person wants to give me. I'm not justifying these things. I'm just saying that, like, this is some of the things that gaming can do. And I think there's a progression element of this, which is that, I looked at some statistics the other day, and obviously game prices are going up. We pay subscriptions to games, but one of the biggest growing industries in the last kind of 20-30 years is phone games. I remember, what was it called? Like Game of War or something like that. I used to have phone games all the time. Like I used to love that, and I remember them being quite big then. I remember getting off my PC and I would go and sit on the bed and I would be on a phone game, and not just any phone game, a phone game that was like a strategy real time, like those ones where you have to buy to speed the time up to like build the items or whatever. They were like really big back then, and they just kept you in the game for as long as they could. They made enormous amounts of money, and those in-game currencies and that, they were just getting started back then. There was nothing like what they are now. But again, I think there was a real negative undertone to this. Lots of things that were demanding your time. And obviously with WoW, you could log off and you could feel like you'd maybe done well that. Maybe you got a few levels, maybe you killed a boss, whatever. But this was when they started introducing like dailies, and the phone games, obviously, they had all of these things you had to do. Well, you didn't have to do them, but you kind of had to do them because in your brain you're competing with all these other players, or maybe you're scared that your base is going to get raided or something's going to happen if you're not on the game. And I really started to understand that, like to feel that, to fear that back then. And that had a really bizarre effect on me, and I think for a long time, for many years, I think that I kind of lost myself to that. I think MMOs, whether it be WoW or games that came next, I mean, I played pretty much like everything, honestly. Tried everything, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings back then. Like there was a game called Tabula Rasa. There was, God, so many games, so many different games that were like MMOs that I would just love. But they were always much like books. Like I would never go in and buy a book because it was just one book. But I would very much buy a book if it was 3 books, if it was a trilogy. Now, why on earth would I do that? Why was the number 3 better than the number 1? Well, maybe it was because I didn't want the book to end. Maybe I didn't want that feeling when you put down the last Harry Potter and you know that there's never going to be another one. And there's that loss and that pain. And what is that pain? What's real life? You can't live in the fantasy anymore. And I think I'd neglected my reality. I think I'd neglected it previous to that moment with my girlfriend, and I think I neglected it for many years after. I think I was very lost, and I think gaming helped to keep me warm, to keep me safe. But I cannot lie and say that if I look back, I could also say that it got between me and making some real hard decisions about changing my life, about fixing the hole, about, figuring out who I really was and where I was going, just because things changed in my life. But I didn't do any of that. I just kept playing. And as the games got boring, as the games got old, I switched to another one. And for infinity's sake, I kept doing that. Now, obviously gaming culture, had changed a lot. Games started to get more and more complex. Things developed. And, Games Workshop, for example, as I've mentioned quite a few times, and this is obviously a massive thing because they're going to be, doing the new Amazon show. If you haven't checked out, the Secret Level Amazon, I mean, God, I've probably watched that like 15 times already. The Warhammer Secret Level on Amazon is absolutely amazing. And that has young Titus in it, if you've watched my 40k video. There's never a point that wasn't an influence. It's still an influence now. I still do a bit of the painting, do a bit of, not so much the gaming, but I love the genre. And that genre is going to take off. God, if you've got stocks in that, I mean, Games Workshop are going to be going absolutely mental once they start releasing their Amazon stuff, which is probably going to be about a year or two. But that, I mentioned that because that kind of adjacently, progressed. My Steam games list increased, and things kind of went on. I think I bought pretty much every 40k or Games Workshop game there was. What am I sitting on now? So I have, let's have a look. As of today, I have how many games? Why is it not telling me how many games? 301. So I have 301. Now I think that's a fair amount of games, but I talk to a lot of people and they have so many more than me. So we're kind of like progressing. I've got the PC gaming. I've got this kind of this connection with the gaming culture around me. I also get kind of a connection to tattoos. And I suppose, again, this doesn't really have anything to do with gaming specifically, but it certainly does have something to do with creativity. Tattoos definitely become a way for me to drown further, maybe add a physical element into that connection to this thing that is keeping me, is holding me, is making me safe, but also stopping me from moving on. I think tattoos kind of add an element. And certainly also because the tattoos, I realised very quickly that I always wanted things that were either kind of phrases or things that I thought of, or stories or things I would write, or they would be kind of gaming culture elements that would provoke me into thinking about, oh, I should do this or I should do that. As I have about 301 games, I have about, well, I don't have 301 tattoos, but I probably have about, I don't know, 6 or 7, maybe a few more. This element of again, creativity, I think, is an important element of gaming, because I think the things that influence us to what games we play are also influenced by the adjacent stuff that's going on in our life, even if that includes the dark stuff. Maybe more so. Maybe we reflect certain gaming inclinations towards the dark things in our own life, or the opposite. I picked up a lot of friends from playing WoW over the years, quite a few different groups, and one group really, really stuck out, and they might even be watching this. Now, the funny thing about this gaming group is they're amazing guys, genuinely amazing, all of them in their own way, all different personalities, And even the ones that I don't know as well, I enormously respect, and I just, in a lot of ways I wish I knew them better. But as certain situations you just find yourself clicking, certain situations you find yourself kind of going through things with those people. And one of the people I met in that WoW guild back then was playing the same class as me, and he was a very dynamic, funny character who always picked hilarious names for his creation, shall we call them, on WoW. Even if they were slightly offensive, I think that was kind of the point. He was an amazing guy, and I learnt a lot from him back then. But he kind of also, as the WoW community thrived, we also met up in person. For me and a few other people kind of created this event, and we all went down to where that guy lived, and we had this amazing party where everyone came from. I mean, there's a couple of other countries people came from, and loads of Brits. It was so cool, guys. It was amazing. It was like everyone was like super awkward at first, but we all started drinking, laughing, playing Mario Kart in the living room. Like, there was all sorts of stuff going on, and it was, oh man, like, who gets to do that? Who gets to go online one day and then you're meeting up with all of those guildies the next? It was an amazing thing. One of the great memories. Now, later on in life, I met that guy's brother, and he wasn't in the guild back then. Him and a friend of his were, who I'm also friends with, but his brother wasn't, and I met his brother much later on, and we're great mates now. Like, again, enormous respect for this person, and a lot, just generally, like, him as a personality, really a funny guy, really interesting, and a very close friend of mine nowadays. But all of these people, these are people that, we still hang out. We go to events. In fact, we're going to an event in 2 weeks together, a gaming event, and it is going to be an amazing. You bring your own computer. It is one of those absolutely unique gaming kind of culture events, and we're all going to be there, just the six of us, and all of these other people, probably quite a few hundred, I would imagine, and we're all going to be playing online games together. And I know it's going to be amazing. We've done this before at a different event, and we had an amazing time. We do about, God, like three days of like 24-hour gaming. Like it's amazing. So why am I telling you this? Well, because gaming has now developed into a friendship level, and then on to a social level. And as I say, even nowadays, we will be going to this in 2 weeks' time. This is a completely new event. I'm really looking forward to what that can offer. But it also has board games. It has the Games Workshop stuff there. I think it will develop as things go, but it is, it's a development of gaming. And that's really valid, because whether you just class online or, single player games as gaming, I know some people do, it doesn't mean that gaming isn't a broader term. And wasn't that what we said at the beginning? What is gaming? What does it mean to call yourself a gamer? Now, the thumbnail that I've actually put on the front of this gamer is kind of a bit of a joke. So if you obviously look at the front of this and you're like, oh, the final thing, and you're like, oh, Gideon, how arrogant. Anyone that's seen me play games, anyone that's watched any of our videos, know I'm not like a great gamer. Like, I'm not, so many of my friends are better at me than at different games. And I'd love to be like one of those natural gamers, just like great first person shooter or strategy. But I do all right. I get what I need to get from it, and I enjoy it in my own way. But in the thumbnail, I kind of class myself as an S tier gamer, and that is supposed to be a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's supposed to be kind of funny. I like the picture as well, but it's kind of that thing of saying, like, what the hell even is that? Like, what does it mean? You know, it's like when you go to a pub quiz and someone wins and they go, oh my god, you're so smart. And it's like, I mean, are you? You know a lot about Coronation Street, or, you know, pens, or, you know, capitals of countries. I mean, don't get me wrong, these are interesting things, and some of them are relevant, you know, especially countries, but it's broad general knowledge. Can you use the term you're smart or you're very intellectual because you win a pub quiz? I mean, maybe, yeah, sure. Like, I wouldn't disagree with you. All I'm saying is that broad term, the idea of saying that you're good at something is kind of I don't take that very seriously in myself, I suppose, is a thing. And why I think that's relevant is because I think it helps to take yourself, you know, not too seriously. You know, as I've said to you before, if you followed my own kind of evolution on this channel, you know, some games will push you. Some games, you're glad you're just single player in it because they really piss you off. Like, you know, I've mentioned a few times, like, I have broken keyboards. Like, I definitely broke them back in the WoW days. I think I broke a lot of keyboards, actually, and even some mice. I remember, like, smacking my hand down on a mouse, and that hurts quite a lot, and just compacting the mouse, like, and then going mental and running up the shop and buying another one. Really stupid things to do, but just this rage of the world not making sense, this boss killing me, whatever it is. But I know that what that was, it wasn't anything to do with the game. It wasn't anything to do with some inanimate object that disrespected me. It was that I desperately needed control, and I just experienced a massive loss of control, and I couldn't accept that that was a problem. So I had to let that out. I had to vent that frustration, and these physical inanimate objects got the brunt of it. No one got to see it. But this is what I say to you guys all the time. I'm not about hiding the ups and the downs of this journey, because this journey is supposed to speak truth. Not truth that's supposed to make you do it or follow it or be it, but truth that says, oh wow, I get that. Like, I understand why that happens, and maybe it's different for me. Maybe I feel differently. Maybe my life feels different, or I've had different experiences, but maybe I've smashed a controller or two. Maybe I've gone through that moment where you look at your broken, not working controller, which is the only thing, by the way, that's worse than actually smashing the controller, is realising you've broken it and then you can't play. Yeah, that was tough. But again, it's the journey. It's the development of what works and what doesn't work. And, you know, on that note, when we all meet up, there's a game that we play. And I think, you know, I can feel a bit of shame in this myself, really. But, you know, we used to play this game, and I think we might be playing it this time, which is called Golf with Friends by Team 17. And I used to play original Team 17 stuff, like, back in the day. And this game is amazing. I mean, anyone that hasn't played Golf with Friends is such a good multiplayer game. But it's also incredibly annoying. It's so easy to lose. It's so easy to lose all progress and all the rest of it. And when you put kinetics on, when you make sure that you can hit other people's ball, when you're trying to do a shot, oh my, be prepared to rage. 6 people on the same course, on a crazy golf course, online, and they're smacking into each other's ball. Ooh, wow. Now, the shame here is that there have been moments where gaming with my friends who I try to only bring kind of positivity, I want to experience that. I'm truly thankful for having them, in my life. I have lost it, on more than one occasion. And I don't like that. Like, I don't like games that push me in that way, but I also don't like that I would behave that way. It's different when you're at home and you just kind of like, you just have to deal with your own shame in the mirror. But when you're looking at the people next to you, and I'm a very self-destructive kind of like my anger is very self-destructive, where I'll burn the world down around me in that moment. So it will be like, I'll get really angry with what just happened, or something really irritating, or something repetitious, like I keep failing, or someone keeps targeting me or something, and I'll go mental, or at least I did back then. And rather than just taking a breath and saying, oh, I just need to like wander away, I'll be like, just fuck it, fuck everyone, like fuck you, like just I have to put my walls up. But I don't. Obviously I don't. So I can look back at that and I can distinguish and say, oh, I would have done that differently, or I shouldn't have played that, or blah blah blah. But you know what? I'm glad I did. And who knows how it will be, this time in 2 weeks. But I think it's good to know, and what I'm trying to get across here is it's good to know not just what you're good at, but what works well with you. Like what, my original video, my first 8-minute video is talking about like why do we react emotionally to different games? If you want to go and have a relaxing day, then for me, I don't want to be playing golf with friends, because even if I'm playing it on my own, I'm gonna get angry. I just am. I don't know why. I wish I did. Maybe that would help, maybe it wouldn't. It's very, very good at provoking me. So I can try to figure that out. I can try to heal, or to develop, or do a bit of therapy for myself, or go to therapy. But I could also just avoid the game and just say, do you know what, like, do I need to put the work in? Is that what gaming's about? Do I have to force myself to like every game, or every game that my friends want to play? Do I have to love that game? I think you can only make up your own kind of answer to that. But I try not to kind of create ultimate endings. Even if I have bad experiences, I'll still try to kind of leave a bit of a gap and say, oh, maybe I'll come back to that. So we'll see how that goes, guys, on the next time I play it. But I do think I'm a bit different now, and I've definitely mellowed out. And my choice of games and the type of things I play has definitely mellowed as well. Now, in terms of, I suppose, PCs and kind of, going forwards with, how we look at actually the PC itself, the actual kind of, I guess, progression of the console or the item. How is that affected by, I suppose, kind of like, how is what you have relevant to your gaming? And I think that in a way, that was always something when I had like less powerful computers. I always got my brother to build me my computer, by the way. That was kind of a thing that we had as a relationship. I would give him some money. I never had like a great deal, but I had some. And he would kind of put together a computer for me. He'd build it. And that was enough. That was great. And then I kind of had a little bit of a break with kind of family stuff for a while. And I decided, and this wasn't that long ago, maybe a couple of years, I decided that really as a self-confessed gamer, maybe I needed to kind of look at that myself and actually see like what actually did I kind of, how did I feel about not being able to understand like what I was actually playing, what I was using? Like how is that okay that, you know, for me I could essentially, you know, play a game but have no idea what memory was or game or video cards or any of that stuff. So what I did is I went on YouTube and I decided I'd saved a bit of money, and I decided that I'm going to not only build my own computer, but I'm also going to give myself a real sense of how do I build it, and what does it feel like to know what my own computer does and works and all the rest of it. And so what I did is I went to this amazing guy. I forget his name now, but he had like a kind of a computer that he was building. It was about £2,500. It's not a cheap PC at all. But I'd saved a bit, and I was in a position where I thought I really want to do this, not just for the computer, but for the experience of doing it. So I went and ordered every single thing that he had. And I'll go through a little bit of this just for any of those tech heads out there, people that actually understand what this means. So I've currently got, and this is my computer that I'm using right now. So I have like an AMD Ryzen 9, which is the X3D. I have a 4080 Super. I use like a Gigabyte ROG motherboard, Lexar RAM. I've got like a 2 terabyte storage, and essentially, you know, these words, as some of you I'm sure will also be feeling, they didn't really mean anything to me. I mean, still, even now, I didn't always understand what a lot of that meant. But slowly over the years, and I do really recommend this, however much you can spend or want to spend, of going to one of these places, and that was his name, Scattervault. I think it's Scattervault. I may be wrong, but I think that's the YouTube name. A lovely American guy who really goes through it detail by detail. He also gets the lowest price individually. Really, really lovely guy. Making my own computer and bringing it up to that 4K level. So I have a computer that wasn't always overheating, wasn't breaking constantly. Also taking it to Windows 11. You know, I don't think one other of my friends uses 11 yet. But, you know, I was playing back in Windows 98, you know, maybe even before that. I'm trying to remember what was before that. But, you know, upgrading to the next Windows is always a bit of a kind of contentious point with gamers. I love 11. Like, it's great. It's just a new thing to learn, and maybe that's an element of it. Maybe there's an element of not wanting to have to relearn and go through all of that stuff. But that new PC, I'm looking at it right now to the side of me. It looks very nice. Lovely RGB lighting. It's spearmint is the colour I'm imagining it's called, and white. So the spearmint is the colour, the light colour should I say, and the everything else, it's in a NZXT. I think they've been getting some bad press recently, but it's in a very unique looking case. Certainly a case that I've never thought I would own. It looks lovely. All white, with a water cooler, which is also white. Lots of lights going on, which is the spearmint. And everything is white. I have a mat, which is also RGB around the edges. That's also in spearmint. I have a keyboard that is a little bit quieter than my flashy light one, because who knew that flashy light ones also make a lot of noise. I have a Razer mouse that is a bit more calm than some of the gamer mices, whatever that is. Yeah, definitely a bit more chill. Everything is essentially white, guys, is what I'm saying. Even my mic, which is Muano. I don't know what that word means, but I have this kind of arm mic that is also white and glowy. And my monitor. The monitor was a massive progression. You know, I never realised how, with a PC at least, having a 4K monitor, how relevant that is to having a 4K system. You might not know what that means, 4K. Like, what is that? Why is that relevant? Well, I didn't know. But as I watched the game behind me, and I look at Wurzag doing his little dance, I think, wow, he had a lot more pixels on the last time I saw him when I had my old computer. It is a cleaner, more beautiful, deeper depth, wider range of colours. It's a quicker machine, and these things they are relevant for sure. I'm very, very happy with the PC I currently have, and I'm very privileged to be able to own it. I'm very, very happy that I kind of took that moment of my life to not take the easy path and get my brother to build this one. I'm really, really glad of that. And that might seem like a silly thing to say, or maybe it doesn't seem as relevant. But gaming, again, we're playing this stuff, we're looking at it, we're hearing it, we're tasting the quality of these games as we play. But gaming, as we've talked about many times, is also about influences. It's about creativity, it's about art, it's about music, it's about sound, it's about the thing that runs the game. How can you enjoy a game? How many times have you really wanted to play a game? I was playing PoE 2 and I made sure I didn't play it at launch, but my god, when it launched, like I think the whole server's just like, loads and loads of problems. And that's very normal. I mean, even WoW gets that sometimes. Like, who likes that? Who hasn't reviewed a Steam game and made a comment about how it runs, or whether their system can handle it, or optimization? It's like, we're not talking specifically about the game. We're talking about how the game functions. And that's a tricky thing, I think, especially if you're reviewing it, because I don't know if that's an us or a them problem, but I think that there is a level where it for me, it's like, I don't want to even get into that. I want to just be able to play, and maybe I need to save, maybe I need to think about how I'm going to do that. But as I say, I feel very blessed to be able to get to a point where I am, in this position where I have my life, I have my practice, I have my career, and I have my gaming PC, my beautiful white gaming PC. And other people might want amazing cars and all the rest of it, and all of those other things, and great. I commend you for whatever you want in life, and what you go through to get those things. But this PC represents something that not only I achieved and I built, but I also bought it. I didn't take a loan out. I didn't. The hardship was saving and then buying, and then it worked somehow. The hardship wasn't because it made me think of me when I was 18, 19 with my Packard Bell, and trying to afford a life that I didn't know whether it was really me or not. And then for the next couple of years having to live a lesser half-life because of how much money I had to give back. Is that not what life is about? Whatever the choices we make, to feel that we're going somewhere, that we are progressing. Is that not what we also look for in games? To know that we're going somewhere. To know that if I'm going to do that again, if I'm going to die and come back, if I'm going to do that same thing for the achievement, you know, I need to feel like there's a reason I'm doing it, that I need to feel like it's going somewhere. I know for me that's a massive part of why I play games, and it's a massive part of the unconscious that probably drives me to keep playing those games. You know, the type of games I play, whether it be, you know, Warhammer in the background here, whether it be the tattoos that cover my skin. I say to cover my skin, I mean, I don't have facial tattoos. I'm not like, you know, I just have, you know, arms and stuff like that. But whether it be, you know, card games, whether it be, you know, board games, or the new era of board games, these stupidly expensive, very, very like kind of fleshed out, glamorous, you know, laminated boards with like level requirements and ages and God, like, you know, all of this stuff like that you get in like Waterstones in England. You know, games like Zombicide, if you've ever seen that, these are amazing games. And very similar. I mean, it's definitely worth mentioning how board games are becoming very, very similar to normal kind of games with you know, developing characters and having models on the board and stuff. Whether it talks about creativity, whether it talks about, you know, friendships and social, whether it talks about a little kid growing up in a religious environment that maybe he wasn't ready for, maybe he didn't understand. But do you know what I did understand? I understood the images that I saw in my head. I understood that angels and demons and gods and, you know, devils and life and death and dark and light and yin and yang, and these are the concepts that I had impregnated into me through the stories that I was exposed to and through the things that I would see, and then I would live out these stories because they were taught to me at such a young age. And even now those stories are connected to the things that I love, the books that I read. I'm reading a trilogy at the moment, a sci-fi trilogy, and I've read it before. I think it's called the Night's Dawn trilogy. Very, very big books. I forget the author's name, but I love pretty much everything he does. He's an incredibly good writer. And the Night's Dawn trilogy is an epic saga, easily the as good as you know, Star Wars or anything like that. And all of these things, to me, even though you might say, Gid, that's a book, Gid, that's tattoos, Gid, that's music, Gid, that's, you know, an image or a saying or a concept or whatever. There is so many things, and I hope I've really reflected that. Because again, I'm not telling you how to be, I'm not telling you what you should be as a gamer or what that word means for you. I'm telling you what that word means for me. And if anything, that's the Easter egg in this, is that image on the right hand side of the thumbnail. If I'm an S tier gamer, guys, the reason I'm an S tier gamer is because I can sit here in front of this computer and I can be honest and vulnerable and broken and fixed, sad, happy, in love with a game, hating a game. I can do all the things that anyone can do. And because to me, that's what being a good gamer is, being the best gamer even. It's not about whether you can crack off 10 headshots in a row. It's not about if you're like, you know, just one of these kind of amazing people that can play in amazing ways, or that you've done, you know, all the Souls games without getting touched by, you know, any weapons. Like that I get it. I do. And that's not just me coping. I do understand, but what I'm trying to say is that my development as a gamer has made me very comfortable with the way I game. It has turned me into the ultimate gamer, the S tier gamer, because for me, I don't need to be amazing at that game I love. I just need to know that I love it, because that gives me more than any amount of headshots or any amount of ending that game or completing that achievement could give me. It gives me a way to cope and to heal and to get angry and sad and to love and to hate and to make friends. And ultimately, it gives me a way to understand myself. So when you see that fun now, if you've actually managed to get to this point in the video, then I hope you can smile with me, because that's what that means. It means that I am simply a gamer. And I hope that you have a better understanding of what that word means to me. Guys, thank you so much if you're getting here to this last video, to this last part. I hope you've enjoyed this. I have a few interesting things planned. I do hope to get another gaming video out, which I'm kind of putting the content in for very soon. But guys, honestly, if you like this, I'm really happy that you do, and I hope that it in some way touches you in your life, and maybe you relate to some of these things. Thank you so much for listening. This is another one from Gideon. I'll talk to you all again soon. Gideon out.